Good evening, you beautiful geeks! Welcome to San Jose's historic California Theater. We are thrilled to once again be live and in person at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference 2024. Now, won't you please silence your devices? Then open your ears and put your hands together for our host, John Gruber.
Hello. Welcome to the talk show. I am your host, John Gruber. Most of you here are probably familiar with me. Welcome. I was told, we were backstage, and the house sound guys were like, wow, this crowd is really loud. Yeah. What do you do? It is great. The crowd is always great here. It does feels a little extra energetic, and with good reason. I think we're going to have a very good show. But before we get to the meat of the show, I have some very special people to thank. These are our sponsors, without whom we would not be here, trust me. They are amazing sponsors, 3 of them. And the first amazing sponsor is iMazing. iMazing 3 is the all-new version of the world's best iPhone manager for both Mac and Windows. Since the iPhone's release way back when, the iMazing team has been delivering the missing features you wish existed working for your iPhone, iPad, or if you still have one, an iPod, and your computer. I don't know, Phil Schiller obviously still has an iPod. I know he flies with it. Version 3 of iMazing features a brand new user interface. It is so beautiful. It is just a classic indie Mac app. Beautiful, simple, gorgeous, makes you want to use it just by looking at it. Version 3 has this new user interface. It is easier than ever to discover, to explore, to get these features. But iMazing gives both individuals, families, it looks, very consumerish, but it is very powerful. Small businesses and even large enterprises can use it to manage their devices and efficiently manage Apple mobile devices. It includes powerful local backups with incremental snapshot support, text message extraction options, whether for compliance or keepsakes. You can tell from that word compliance, probably not about families, a little bit more for the enterprise. But it is one of those tools that scales from you to really big companies. Versatile data extraction, file transfer. It is natively coded for the Mac by a passionate team in Switzerland for an unparalleled, no-compromise experience. Trusted by millions of users all over the world. Check out iMazing 3 today and save 20% by visiting imazing.com/thetalkshow. That's imazing.com/thetalkshow. Second, my good friends at Flexibits, the makers of Fantastical and CardHop. These are, you guys probably have heard of them, these are amazing. Fantastical is a calendar, CardHop is a contact manager. Absolutely gorgeous, previous Apple Design Award winners, and they are for every platform Apple makes. Of course, the Mac, iPhone, iPad. They even have, right on day one, a fantastic version of Fantastical for Apple Vision Pro. Really gorgeous. Now, I'm not naming names, but there are other companies that don't have a calendar app that is native for Vision Pro. Fantastical was native on day one, and it is gorgeous. How Fantastical for Vision did not win an Apple Design Award this year, I do not know. I got to find Galenzi in the audience after the show and petition him. I don't know. It must be a backstory there. But it is beautiful, beautiful apps. They also have Flexibits Premium is their subscription service. You pay for Flexibits Premium and you get it all. You get Card Hop and Fantastical for all the platforms. You don't just pay per platform, you just pay one thing, you get them all. They are great apps, they work together very well, and they have been using the fact that it's a subscription service to build out an infrastructure on the web to do things like doing the thing where you pick a time for an event and people coordinate, that sort of thing. All super, super secure. They only send the data that they need to the cloud. They don't keep anything they don't need. But to coordinate picking times, stuff like that, you go to the web, you send an invitation. People can say, oh, I'm free at 2, I'm free at 2, he's free at 3, everybody's free at 2:30, then we'll do it at 2:30. That sort of stuff, all there built into Flexibits Premium service. It is fantastic. And serious stuff like integration with Microsoft 365 and totally fun stuff like stickers that you can put in messages. I mean, the whole scale from totally serious enterprise to putting stickers in messages with the Fantastical mascot. Really, really great. New and existing customers with this special deal for this show. New customers get 20% off when you start a subscription. Lots of people who watch my show probably already subscribed. What's in it for you? Well, guess what? Go to this code, go to this URL, and when your renewal comes up, just by having gone to this, you'll get 20% off when you renew. Everybody gets 20% off, new and existing, by going to flexibits.com/WWDC 2024. That's FLEXIBITS, flexibits.com/WWDC 2024. Third, Flighty. How many people here already use Flighty? I use Flighty. It is fantastic. Flighty, another Apple Design Award winner back in 2023, way back last year. Every download of Flighty, you get the pro features complimentary for your first flight. You do not need to sign up for a subscription and then cancel it or anything. Try Flighty next time you're flying. You get all the pro features, you can see what it's like. I guarantee you will sign up after you've flown with Flighty compared to flying without it. Every year, there's a new record for problems with flights. I mean, I don't think I'm making this up here. Flying is getting worse. Last-minute delays, more disruptions, plus the airlines are like secret and they don't really want to keep you up to date. Flighty hooks into all of the data sources and APIs that the airline industry has and keeps you up to date. I cannot tell you just in the last year how many times Flighty has told me about gate changes, and it's not just like, oh, you go from A10 to A8, but like when you go from gate A23 to gate D12, and it's like, oh, that's like 20 minutes away in the airport. Flighty tells you as soon as it happens, so you're not at the wrong end of the airport. It is absolutely fantastic. They've got great features for sharing your flights with friends or friends sharing your flights with you. So if somebody in your family or a dear friend is traveling, put their flight into Flighty and you get everything you need to know. And of course, hooks up to all of the latest stuff that you would want them to. Live activities on the home screen, everything you want. It is so fantastic, so beautiful. Honestly, the airlines just want you to sit quietly and just be uninformed at the gate, get there 3 hours early and just sit there, on your iPhone. No, get Flighty, you will be there when you need to be there without wasting time, and you will be informed of everything you need to know. Go to flighty.com/TTS, the talk show, TTS, flighty.com/TTS. My thanks to all of those sponsors. And now, with no further ado, I have two very special guests to introduce. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Craig Federighi and Greg Joswiak. Craig!
Are you fired up? I'm fired up.
You shrunk.
I'm not really Craig Federighi. I could never pull off the real hair. Anyway. All right, let's bring up the real Craig. All right.
Oh, sure. I think they got both Craig Federighi and Greg Joswiak at the same time.
They did.
One
package. It's a twofer.
That was fantastic. Hey.
That's as close as Craig hair I'm ever going to get to. That's for sure.
All right.
Actually going in the opposite direction.
How many people in the audience saw last year's show? How many people remember the end of last year's show? Mr. Federighi is one hell of a guitar player and did some shredding. We don't have anything like that today. Now, how many people here were at Apple Park for the keynote yesterday? And I'm sure for everybody watching in post on YouTube, I'm sure everybody has watched the keynote. But for those who were in Apple Park, the last couple of years since this new format's been out, the keynote starts right at 10 a.m., but around 9:55, Tim comes out, welcomes the crowd, has Craig come out to also say hello to the crowd, and Craig comes out and fibs to the audience and tells them that, that there are no gags, there's no zany opening movie, and none of that is true. Well, I'm an honest man, and I'm telling you, I swear to you, there is no stunt at the end of the show. We spitballed ideas.
Didn't come up with anything.
There was an idea to maybe have Craig parachute from up there. We have a helmet.
We have the helmet. That helmet's heavy, by the way.
But I am to understand there was some concern about the helmet and the hair.
I mean, not especially. But I thought it looked especially good on John.
Yeah. I had cool Craig hair. Hey, we do have some gifts for you.
Oh.
Yeah. You have to declare those on your taxes. There are 2 patches for WWDC.
I have one more comment about the opening. I thought the opening movie of the keynote was fantastic. I mean, I think you guys always. It looked realistic. You did not jump out of an airplane.
Whoa. What the hell, Gruber? What are you implying?
But here's my real question. Number one, how great was it to see Captain Phil Schiller flying the airplane?
I will tell you that stuff wasn't the only take.
Well, that was my question. Are there alternate takes where he didn't say, I'm getting too old for this stuff?
That was the G-rated version of that take. You know, Phil, you know there are other takes.
As usual, I think you guys did a very good job ordering the keynote, and I think we can stick to roughly keynote order as we progress through topics tonight. If you guys...
We picked that order for a reason.
Let's relive it together.
But it opened with Vision OS 2 and a sort of state of Apple Vision Pro. Do you find it frustrating that 5 months in of shipping, 4 months?
Four. Don't age us.
That there's widespread sentiment that, well, it's not really as popular as the iPhone. This product is a dud.
John, we've gotten that with every product we've ever introduced for new product. Truly, I mean, the iPod came out and people are like, oh my God, who's going to buy this? You know, at the time it was a $399 music player. CD players are $39. There's no future in this. And the reality is it takes time. It took us about 2 years, right? And iPod, if you remember, that worked out pretty well. But in the meantime, everybody was calling for its death. Same thing, by the way, for the iPhone. The iPhone started, off, and it had a fairly meager start. You may remember, even after we were, sometime into it, we said, okay, we'd love to get 1% market share of the phone business in the first full year, which is 2008. We just barely made it, right? And that turned out pretty well as well.
Two, I think.
Yeah, got past 2. We hear all the time. And Watch has gotten it. Oh, what a dud. Who's buying this? It's working out pretty well. So it takes time to build a business. I think there's a general human tendency. I actually think God, I hate to tell you whose quote it was, but somebody who talked about the fact that people tend to overestimate things that can happen in the near term, and they underestimate things that happen in the longer term. And I think that product expectations are much like that. It takes a little while to build a business.
Well, and isn't platform building almost the canonical example of that? Mm-hmm. That what platform ever debuted as a huge hit? Maybe the web, right? You could sort of say, sort of exploded, and then you look back
to started slower than you think.
Right, and then you look back to, like, in Wikipedia.
That's worked out pretty well as well.
To when Tim Berners-Lee invented it, and it's like, oh no, there was like a 5-year stretch there where I was still using Gopher.
Originally, you had to buy a Next machine in order to do the web, so the market was contained for a while there.
But I'll tell you what, we're psyched over how many apps we already have for Vision Pro. We have over 2,000 native apps already. We had over 1,000 just in the first few days, which was faster start than even we had for the original App Store. We have, and let's not forget, we have 1.5 million compatible apps. So there's a lot of things you could do with it even today, even as we're, as you said, building the platform. So it's pretty exciting.
One of the themes I thought for this show, and talking about Vision OS and the platform, is just the word patience. And I think that Apple as a company has institutional patience that other companies in the field don't have. For example, I can think of a company that was also in the AR, VR space and even renamed themselves after, I can't remember the word. What was the word?
I don't know. I don't say the word, you know that, so.
That was a trap. Because you told Joanna Stern when she asked you what you thought of the metaverse, your answer was?
I would never, ever use that term.
A word I would never say.
A word I will never say. And you tried to trick me right here.
But that, seemingly has lost interest in the metaverse in favor of AI, and it's the new, it's the hot new thing, chasing the hot new thing, and then another hot new thing, and then you chase it. Whereas Apple, there was the, sometime in the last decade, 1,000 no's for every yes. But that when you guys get to a yes, you stick with it. And I think, 4 months into a platform is very early to judge the long-term prospects of it.
We agree.
I thought that the other...
That was really well said, John. I couldn't do it about it.
WWDC is a developers conference, but I thought that some of the news yesterday about Vision was it's if you expand developers to creative people, it was creating content for Vision Pro with partnerships with Canon, making a new lens with 2 elements so that you can get stereo right from one lens and a camera system. A partnership with Blackmagic, again, production tools for creating immersive content. And that, to me, is where Apple is, where Apple has always been, is creating these platforms for creative people to make the thing. So I'm curious what else you see coming soon for Vision and Vision OS.
Well, let me just maybe even kind of build on that, because that was probably one of the biggest questions we got from creatives and filmmakers was, I want to be able to do this. Because once you see a movie, you know, even a 2D movie, it looks amazing. You see a 3D movie, it looks even better. It's kind of like, you know, you've heard some of these directors saying this is the way they always envisioned a 3D movie to be experienced, is how it was in Vision Pro. And then when you see the immersive video we did, it's like being there. And of course, so filmmakers realizing this feels like the future, right? This feels like the way you want to experience these things. They want to go out and create their own stuff. So it was a big push for us to go out and work with the Canons, the Blackmagics, to be able to say, let's enable an ecosystem, because also as part of building a platform, is an ecosystem, right? An ecosystem of content providers, app providers, the whole works. So that was a big deal for us. So it's coming along.
All right, moving on. Time is ticking. iOS opened up with
We agree. Yeah.
home screen customization. Apparently, it takes 18 revisions to get to the point where you can arrange icons where you want. Can you speak to the engineering challenges?
You talked earlier, John, about patience. Like you got to wait, pick your moments. And we thought 18 years was about the right moment to move an icon from the top down to the bottom.
It felt worth it to me.
We did it.
Yeah.
There were actually developers that were born. We had to wait until they could mature and join Apple to finish the project. We got to do it.
It's for the kids.
Needed to save a win for the next generation.
I think, and I know we have, very serious, very complicated, very serious, computer science topics to talk about tonight. But I think it was a very fun and going to be beloved feature, in addition to being able to arrange the icons where you want, but being able to customize the look. And flipping to dark mode, well, that seems, I'd never thought of it before, but I thought, boy, these icons, well, I know dark mode is super duper popular, but I never really had occurred to me before that the icons don't change in dark mode, and now they do, and they do look really cool. But I think even cooler than that is the customization you can do where you can pick these color tints and you can make it your own. Like the example in the keynote was very, very vibrant, like a vibrant electric yellow, and it themed all the things. My two thoughts on that are it takes me back to being when I first got a Mac. And what did I do in the early 90s when I first got a Mac is I sat there and dicked around in ResEdit customizing my icons and making...
ResEdit.
ResEdit. We love ResEdit.
And remember Folder Icon Maker? Folder Icon Maker was this great utility where if you wanted to make a folder for all of your Photoshop files, you would drop Photoshop's icon on Folder Icon Maker, and it would spit out a folder icon with Photoshop's icon on the folder. Well, I thought my computer was way better than anybody else's because my files were organized in folders that had the icon of the app. I spent a lot of time on that. But a couple of years ago with shortcuts, what I saw, and my son really got into it and made this customized home screen where all of his icons, and it was sort of a 3 or 4 step process where you make a shortcut and the shortcut just opens the app, but then you can assign a custom icon to the shortcut so it looks like you're tapping the app and it just jumps you into the app, and you could make you spend some time, make a whole home screen of black and white icons, monochromatic, and then if the mood hits you like, I wish they were all blue, well then you got to start all over and do them all over again.
Yeah.
Now you've made a feature where, I think that's great that you guys spend time on that because people love to customize.
Yep.
I am glad, though, that you were able to pass that legacy on to your son. Had we made it too easy, this critical step in his maturation, he would have missed it, and now he's stronger for it. So.
But do you see that as a people-pleasing, like, yes, people are going to love this feature?
Yeah, 100%. When we shipped iOS 14 with widgets and, things went nuts. I mean, just even the number of people becoming developers to download the beta on that first release because
It's true.
And I think it had gone viral on social media with people sharing what they were doing to their screens, and it created this incredible enthusiasm. And so, we waited 4 more years, and then we did something about it.
Patience.
Patience. That's one of tonight's themes, I'm told. So.
Yes. But I think that at times, you guys Apple is very famously known for its design strength, and you buy Apple products because they are well designed and they are designed by Apple designers. But it's not, here's how we want your iPhone to look. Your iPhone is going to look just like the ones in the Apple Store with our wallpaper and our arrangement. And no, this is, your iPhone can look like your iPhone.
I think that's true. I think the design team has really wanted to, when you build a new product, I think you do want to a degree to establish a kind of shared reality and identity for that product. And we certainly did that pretty thoroughly with iPhone. But then there becomes a point where you want to let everybody make it their own, but you still want it to be their own iPhone. And I think we've found the balance between even as you do all of this customization of your home screen, of your lock screen, we did a bunch of work there. They are very much your own, but they're still very much iPhone. And I think that's where we've tried to find the balance. And I think this year we pushed that frontier a little further, and I think people are really going to enjoy it.
I would say the biggest upgrade to Control Center since Control Center was added, where Control Center now is almost like a mini environment within itself with third-party APIs for controls. Including all the way back to the lock screen, where you can, previously it's like, you can get the flashlight or the camera, or, you could get the flashlight and the camera. And now you can fill those spots with anything you want, including from third-party apps who can make their own controls for those spots.
Do you think it's a member of the Control Center engineering team out there? Or either way. We absolutely, we started to see, even with the action button on the iPhone, like a lot of enthusiasm for people to run custom actions. Sometimes they were, of course, using shortcuts as a means to do that. And so the idea of making controls really kind of a universal concept in the system, letting you, of course, tie them to the action button, but also put them in Control Center, and then that naturally became, okay, well, you're gonna want to customize Control Center in a lot of ways to do that. You might have more of them, so you might want multiple pages of Control Center. And then, the biggest leap, those 2 sacred buttons ever since iPhone 10 down at the bottom of the screen, to allow those to be customized, was a big step for us to take. But it opens up a lot of power. And the other thing we did, many years ago, you might remember, Control Center had a brief moment with pagination. There was a time where it was side-scrolling, and that design had the property that it was guaranteed that every time you went to Control Center, it was on the last page you were on that wasn't the page you wanted to use next, right? So we backed off from that and created an all-in-one design. For this one, of course, we preserve the ability to have a really full-featured main page if you want, but also we created a gesture so you can just pull down and get right to the page you want in one step. And we thought that was super important to make it, browsable, but also essentially instantly navigable as you build new pages. And so I think people are going to have a lot of fun with that. And I think developers now just exposing more and more of their capability as actions and giving users so many different ways to tap into that, whether it's from the Shortcuts app or from Control Center or these other action buttons. are great. And as we'll talk about later, that the intense framework that is actually the way they express actions has other side benefits in other parts of the system.
You say we'll talk later, but I know you haven't looked at my notes here.
You said we were going to talk about the show in order, so I'm just figuring. All right, you're a thorough man. You will get us there eventually.
All right, here's a feature that I think kind of flew by in the keynote, but it really caught my eye, and it's the new Setup Accessories API.
I definitely remember the team.
We now know where we're gonna, by the end of this, we're gonna have a map of where everybody
we should
who
call
works.
out different groups. WebKit.
But I would say that in the keynote, it was presented as solving the following problem. It's just when you buy certain third-party peripherals that say use Bluetooth or want to get on Wi-Fi, and when you're setting them up, they would ask to use Bluetooth, which brings up a system prompt, and it would say this wants to use Bluetooth, and the explanation text would be like, it wants to connect to certain things or something like that.
Right.
And it's like allow or don't allow. And it's like, well, I have no idea why this thing I bought wants to connect to Bluetooth. What am I doing? It's very confusing. I guess allow it, I bought the thing. And this solves it by presenting it in a very, pretty much using the framework of the way that you pair AirPods.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the cases where providing the better user experience and a more private one were hand in hand. And it is the case today, or prior to yesterday, I guess, that when you'd set up that accessory, if you felt comfortable proceeding and you set up your drone or whatever it was, that app still had open-ended access to Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever. And so you don't know what kind of signature it's gathering of discovering nearby devices and so forth. And you probably didn't go back afterwards and take that permission away, and maybe the app even still needed it. So we've really focused over the years, you've seen this on feature after feature, where we've made the granting of access very clear and specific and well scoped. And you saw that this year also with contacts. Because today you'd have an app, maybe you want to do some messaging with it or something, and it says, all right, this app wants access to your contacts in order to give you maybe convenient autocomplete as you're typing a name or something. Convenient autocomplete, yes, we found that engineer. So, but what did you do? I mean, you just gave them like the full history of your contacts, present and future, out of which we've seen a history of people kind of hoovering that up and using it to build a social graph on their servers and all sorts of things. And so now that's locked down. But one thing we weren't able to really cover in great detail in the keynote is that we've given apps a great out-of-process API for if you're typing in that app, trying to type a completion, there's a way that they can surface in their own search UI without seeing the contact they're surfacing, surface a match that we get out of your contact, so then you can grant access one at a time. So this gives you the same kind of convenience you want without just opening the kimono on all your some of the most sensitive data.
Right, so it's out of process.
Sorry, that was a graphical image there. Kimono closed.
And there's also a thing that didn't make the keynote, which is to use the new setup accessories. It's a new API, so peripheral makers, the people who make the apps for those peripherals that are on their phone that ask for the permission have to opt into this. I think they're going to want to because it's such a nicer experience.
Yeah.
But if they stick with the older one, those dialogues saying, the older one saying this app wants to access Bluetooth have been expanded to show you, oh, well, before you say allow or don't allow, here are all the Bluetooth things that are in your network right now that you would be telling this app that you have. Or if it's Wi-Fi, here's all the devices, and in my house, it's an awful lot of devices are on the Wi-Fi. But that's really, really just fantastic, because I think those dialogues before, like, I have no idea what it's going to, I don't really feel comfortable giving this access to this app. I don't know why it wants this, but I don't even know what it would see. Now it shows you what it would see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these dialogues, it was started with location, where you'd see some text saying to your location. You didn't quite get a visceral sense of what that meant. And so we started showing you on a map what you were giving them. And then if you gave app's location over the long term, we remind you, we still do remind you, and kind of show you where you've been as well, to give this sense just at a glance visually, like this is what you've been handing over, this is what you're going to be handing over. And I think that's a critical design problem. How do you convey the concept of sharing? Because a little bit of explanatory text doesn't come close to giving like that picture or that real world sample of all your devices and so forth. And so that's been a big piece of work for us over the last several years.
Yeah. The other problem I see this solves is the accusation that, okay, AirPods get a really slick pairing UI because Apple makes AirPods and Apple makes the iPhone, and you get this really beautiful UI. What about third parties? Well,
sure.
And the pattern that I see, here's the pattern that I see. There's a problem. The problem is it's really hard to pair wireless AirPods with a device.
Yeah.
2, Apple solves the problem with a really clever solution. 3, Apple creates APIs using that same thing so that anybody can do the same thing that Apple does with it.
Apple sounds pretty great.
But in between step 2 and 3 is patience.
That's one of our themes.
It's
a virtue.
But is that, what do you say to someone who says that it should ship as a public API right away? Like the day AirPods dropped, that should have been an API that any other company that makes headphones could have used.
Well, I think a lot of where our ability to innovate comes is from our ability to rapidly try things out, some of which don't work, some of which we need to get out there and learn and perfect before they become API. API is a contract, virtually written in blood. Like people then depend on it. We are then signing up to support it, keep it working well over time. And getting to the right API, I think any developer here who knows, you put something together for use inside your app, that's one thing. Getting exactly the right abstractions, the right contract that you want to live with and support for the decades is a whole different exercise. And so the practice of, we have teams internally that live on, if you're any team shipping software with the operating system, you're taking the pain of living on a lot of work in progress that are us, different teams at Apple, trying out new framework, APIs, and designs, and you're riding that crazy wave and taking in a lot of the pain of doing that, also that we can then produce hopefully an API for others that has been perfected through that process. And I think that's a virtuous cycle for us to be able to perfect it and then scale it out.
And so do you think people out there need a little more patience?
And yes, absolutely.
Speaking of patience, speak to me about the engineering challenges of bringing color to tapbacks.
It was a lot more than color this time. Go on, Greg.
That may not have been an engineering issue.
That might be the best answer you've ever given to a question on this show, ever. There is a lot of cool stuff in messages, but I'm going to move on to photos. And
yeah.
Photos for both iOS and iPadOS it's very familiar when you launch it. It's a significant new version, but when I heard that the tab bar at the bottom was eliminated, I have to admit I was like, That seems like the wrong way to go. It seems like, oh, here's a list of photos, and now a new version, we've added a tab bar at the bottom to organize. But then I saw it, And I realized, and then I saw iOS 18 photos, and then I took out my phone, still running iOS 17, and I realized I don't really use that tab bar. I'm always in library. And what were those tabs for? They were for things like albums and stuff, which you manually, create and put things in, or manually define smart albums on the Mac or something like that. But that you, the user, sit there and spend time on a Saturday afternoon organizing, and not necessarily the replacement, but the next step in iOS 18 and iPad, or in all the platforms and photos, is using machine learning even more to automatically categorize your photos into things like trips or groups, or what other ways is machine learning organizing your tens of thousands of photos for you?
Yeah, so one of my favorites now, last year we did pets, which was pretty great. But now we even do like groups of people. So, because if you analyze the graph of photos and who appears with whom, you'll find things like, in my library, I'll say, me and my spouse, me and my best friend, me and the whole family together. These like collections. You're very often looking for exactly those kinds of photos, right? Not just of a single person, but of groups being together. Or another big one is trips, right? Which are not just some day or some moment, but a extended period where you were away in certain kind of photos. And it's amazing. It just turns out we can do an extremely good job of finding trips, finding the best photos of those trips, and it creates a really just compelling way to look back. But I think that design point about the tabs, this was one that we worked on a long time. In fact, this was one where we were building it. Design was doing incredible work. We were building prototypes. We were living on them. We had patience. It was a whole year where we were thinking of shipping it, and then we said, we don't quite have it right yet, and we kept iterating on it to get it right. And I think that the team did just amazing work to do that. But part of what we realized is, for many users, and this is true across a lot of apps on the phone, they have tabs, but you only use one of them, and you forget about the rest. And again, almost like that pagination of the original control center, if you ever left photos on the other tab, you probably, next time you came back, it was in the wrong place. And we had this great area called For You that was a tab that you probably rarely went to unless maybe you clicked on a widget or something and it took you in there. And yet that was where all of this organization actually had been building up and happening over time. And it was like this hidden gem that we didn't have the right way to make it accessible. And we finally found the design that said, if you're trying to get at the grid in your most recent photos, there it is, it's effortless, it's just as it was before. You want to see these organized collections, well, they're right there too, each of them just as accessible as the other. I think it really came together, and it'll be interesting to see how much, whether third parties pick up this pattern or not for other kinds of apps, because I think it's come together really, really nicely.
Off the top of my head, I think Photos is the app that just broadly, almost everybody, it's almost the odd user who doesn't have a large collection of photos in their library. It's for very typical users, and at the scale of your platforms, we're talking, what, like 1 billion people?
Yeah, we have over 1 billion users, John.
Right.
That's correct.
Over 1%.
Over 1%. It's worked out all right.
But like, I have lots and lots, I don't know, probably hundreds of thousands of emails, most of them unread still, but
Yes.
But everybody has lots of email, but most people tend to live at the top of their inbox at the new email. But Photos is a thing where the stuff that's in there, if you have 50,000 photos in your library, if you go back 40,000 photos, if anything, they might be more valuable to you, right, than the most recent ones. You could take a new picture. If I lost my last week of photos, I can take a picture of my family from the last week and they look the same. I can't lose a photo. Well, you know what I mean? I think it's very true. It's the one thing that everybody has in their lives where it's a massive amount of data, And what are you going to do with it? And this is where machine learning, I think, it's just a step change in exposing this and changing the way people deal with their photo libraries.
Well, and you took the photos for a reason, right? And you want to go back and enjoy them. And I think the team's done an amazing job with everything from the photo widget to this redesign to exposing those things. I mean, how many times do you get those photos and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, and you share it, right? You go share it back with your family. It's like, that's why we take pictures. We want to enjoy them.
Yeah, I don't know about the Gruber household when you were growing up, but in my household, I don't know, there were maybe 4 photos taken of us per year.
Yes.
Like every few years, one of them made it up onto, the mantle or something like that.
Yeah.
And growing up, those are like the only photos that, like, my self-conception is rooted in this like handful of couple of photos. And now, my kids live in an entirely different world where, not only are we taking photos constantly, but now these, like the widgets on my desktop are constantly picking great photos of them at different times of their lives, and then I click on them, and then I'm texting them every day with some photo of them. Look at this, you used to look like this. I don't know what I'm doing to them. But it's different at least, and I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's all psychologically.
But you really couldn't do these things without machine learning.
No way. Yeah, I mean, if we're just picking photos at random, you'd get lots of screenshots, whiteboards, seats. It'd be great. Look at this. Yeah.
And I mentioned Mail. Mail, very similarly, has a very nice machine learning updates this year with things like, categorization of your incoming mail. These are where things like receipts go. These are things, you subscribe to a bunch of newsletters. They go somewhere else. And it leaves your inbox for actual email from actual people trying to get to you. I thought one of the cleverest little things was I think it was almost a throwaway line in the keynote that, hey, maybe the first 2 lines of an email are not the best way to understand what the email is about. Use machine learning to summarize the email, and if you're only going to have, it's a row of your inbox and you only get 2 or 3 lines of text, let AI give a summary. It's got to be better than the first 2 lines that like PR people send to me, right?
It's life-changing.
Oh, PR people out there. But not your emails. I'm talking about other PR people.
I get these messages, and they used to say, Craig, I love Apple so much, and then whatever, and then now it says
just for me.
Now it just says wants free iPhone. It cuts right through it.
That's also for me.
But photos, like I said, I think, I don't know, do you guys know, like, what is the average photo library size? I don't know if you guys even collect that.
I don't know off the top of my head, but we know more pictures are taken with an iPhone than any other camera in the world.
Right. Anecdotally, I think, very, very typically, tens of thousands.
Lots.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lots and lots.
lots and lots.
Everybody uses email, right? It is, for better or for worse, it is, it's part of the glue.
Lots of people our age use email.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's an age thing. Yes.
Once people get jobs, I think.
Yeah.
Before that,
So you're-
before that, some other apps that I don't use.
There's
that they're
maybe
using.
some others, yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying those young engineers who got the home screen to have icons wherever you want them don't answer their email.
Email's not on the home screen, yes.
But these are very practical apps that people use very widely, and machine learning is making things they actually do better, or making it so they do the things with way less time, like skipping the wants free iPhone email.
I mean, that is probably a theme that I'm glad you picked up from our event. I mean, I think it's a theme from Apple over many years now that in many cases you didn't need to think about how we're doing it. Is it machine learning? Why does this camera take a good photo? Why is photos building me a nice memory? How is it surfacing a photo I actually care about? Yeah, there was a lot of powerful machine learning happening behind that all along, But the key is, what is it doing for you?
Right. WatchOS, I think a flagship feature of the new version of WatchOS is the machine learning powered update to the Photos face.
Yep.
Which is doing similar things like, hey, not just this is a good photo of a person I think you would like on your watch, but it's also one that's framed well for Apple Watch. And with machine learning, here's where we think the numerals for the time could go and would fit.
And all works, yep.
And I played with it in a demo, and it's like, yeah, this is like, these things look designed. They look like posters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But where does that? Are you guys frustrated, or you guys just don't care that these features are in the works? With amidst this narrative of Apple is behind on artificial intelligence and all of this whiz-bang new intelligent software features.
Well, we've been doing machine learning and AI, you've heard me say it, for so many years. We didn't even call it ML or AI. We called it proactive. If you remember, we're doing proactive features. We've been doing this stuff for a long time. We've been building neural engines for 7 years now, I think, right? To help us do, AI and ML on devices. So we've been at this a long time. And
Well, I mean, and that's been the funny bit now with the AI PC. I mean, it's like someone discovered the idea of a neural engine this year.
a neural processing unit.
NPU.
NPU.
Renamed.
Nothing like what we've done.
Nothing like that. Yeah. So obviously, from phones for many years, and the first M1 Mac, and we introduced in 2020, and every Mac we've introduced since. I guess we missed the boat to name it an AI PC because we've been making great ones this whole time. But that's not the point. They're great Macs.
No.
Parlaying right from iOS into iPadOS, and I think this year it's a particularly blurred distinction because maybe there's some minor exceptions, but it seems like with the tentpole features, it's feature parity on iOS and iPadOS with, like for example, when lock screen customization first came to iPhone, it came to iPad 1 year later.
Yeah.
The customizations we've already been talking about, moving icons around, tinting your icons, getting dark mode icons. iPadOS 18 this
Control
year.
Center, yeah.
Yeah, Control Center.
New Photos app. Yeah, we were able to do them in sync this year, which is great. And then of course we added on, one particular app this year to iPad.
Patience. Patience.
Per your theme. Yeah. Patience.
Finally, calculator for iPad.
Yes.
Was your strategy to hold back on a calculator for iPad so that when you did it, we would get this sort of reaction?
We wanted you to really want
I mean, could you imagine all the adulation we would have given up had we actually shipped it right out the gates?
Yeah.
When iPad first came out, would anyone have cheered?
No.
But no, you hold it,
no.
and hold it, and hold it.
Yeah, it's like that dramatic pause. Yes.
Yeah.
I forget if I've previously asked you about a calculator app for iPad. I know in other interviews I've seen you do, you have been asked about it.
all the time. I mean, truly, all the time. We did the big iPad introduction, in early May, and I was still getting asked, "Are you guys going to do a calculator?" I'm like, Patience.
That must have been hard in May.
Oh, it was.
But one of your answers when you would be asked, your sort of non-answer was, well, what would we bring to a calculator on a bigger screen? Turned out to be true. You did bring something with math notes.
Yeah, I mean, it was a real answer at the time, which is we really, obviously it was straightforward if we wanted to bring a blown-up iPhone-style calculator to the iPad. But we really felt that we wanted to do something more and different and uniquely iPad when we did it. And we really found the moment for a lot of things to come together this year to to do that, to do one that made it meaningful for iPad. And so, and I couldn't be happier, I think, and the team with the reception that all of you gave it at the event. I mean, it was fantastic, and we're obviously really happy with the work.
I think one of the really cool things about doing it with the pencil integration, which is not the only way to do it. I know in the keynote it was, because it came up in the iPad segment, it's all with the pencil, but it's there on the phone. It's speaking about feature parity. It's
in the Mac.
It's on the Mac.
Yep, that's right.
And obviously on the Mac there's no pencil. You type, you can type math
Which people
too.
still do.
But I think. But I thought the really interesting thing about emphasizing it with pencil wasn't just finally there's an iPad calculator. It's that for mathematical notation, the pencil is actually far more natural and expressive than typing, right? You can't make a square root thing and with a keyboard, you type SQRT with parentheses.
Yep.
And that's not how math students think of it. Math students think of it with the notation that they're doing in class. And you just draw it. And then you're like, oh, I need parentheses. Well, it's a pencil, so you just draw the pencils around it afterwards. Or you draw the parentheses around it afterwards.
That's how I learned it.
Yeah.
We agree, John. Yep.
Sort of in the same lines, but the Smart Script, which is the name for the feature where you're writing in your handwriting, and Smart Script will actually make your handwriting better.
Yeah, I mean, step one was to learn your handwriting so that we could both create writing that was consistent with your handwriting, and that we could even sort of build the neatest version of your handwriting that was consistent with your handwriting style. Going back years now, we really had this goal to how there's so many things that are great about writing with a pencil or pen, but there's also so much that's great that's a disjoint set about typing, which is typed text. If you spell check and correct, no problem, it can rewrap that. You want to insert in the middle, no problem, it can reflow it. You want to copy and paste a section, you can do that. But of course, when you want to do that with handwriting, those things aren't really possible unless we can actually generate your handwriting. If you want to copy, paste, and move all the words around and change it, or we want to spell check it, we have to rewrite that word for you. And so SmartScript lets us learn your handwriting, and then we're able to build all these other capabilities I don't know if you take notes with a pencil, I sometimes do, and always I realize there's a word I want to insert in the middle there, and then you put an arrow and you scribble some mess up above it, right? Now you can just move it aside, but of course that means it has to rewrap, so now we need to understand the flow of the text and rewrap it. So we're really trying to bring the best of pencil and the best of typed text together, and SmartScript lets us do that.
So cool.
Yeah. Somewhere out there's got to be some very long-term Apple employees who worked on the Newton who are like, yes, this is what we were going for, right? And including scribble to create the gap, to say, I don't want that word anymore. Scribble it out, which is one thing I've been missing that I can remember with my Newton that I missed until now, and now I've got it.
Yep, you got it.
There you go. Patience.
So a couple of years ago at WWDC, I think maybe 2018, I didn't bother looking it up, doesn't matter which year, but I think it was sort of an iconic slide in a keynote was you addressing the sort of conjecture out there that Apple was in the midst of merging macOS and iPadOS. And do you remember the slide?
That was a very clear slide, very simple.
No.
With, I believe, an anvil drop and dust. And
I think it was the single biggest letters that ever appeared on a Apple slide.
I think at the time, the conjecture that you were addressing was of the mind that the Mac, which came out in 1984, is old, and the iPad is new, and that if that was what Apple was thinking, it was going to be the iPad superseding the Mac, is what people thought. And you're like, No. I think we've come around in the 6 years since, and with the new iPads that came out a month ago, and it re-upped this sort of mentality of, oh, you're calling these iPad Pros, but I can't do my professional work on them. You should let me dual boot my iPad into Mac OS, or why don't you bring AppKit and Mac OS to iPads? And I kind of feel like we're heading towards another no. But I tried to write about it, but
Looking for the anvil drop?
I've pontificated along similar lines of that, of my, not necessarily frustration, but my personal feeling that I'm far more productive on the Mac than the iPad. But the light bulb that went off to me is, well, the way I deal with that is I just do what I feel most productive on the Mac, and let the iPad be the iPad.
That's exactly the right answer, John. They're different products. They're different design points. And iPad's great strength is the fact that you've heard us say it's a cliche at this point, it's a magical sheet of glass, becomes anything you want it to be. And it's over 1 million apps that are designed for the iPad to allow it to do incredible things. And I wouldn't tell somebody who's a Procreate artist that they're not doing pro things. Right? They're doing amazing things, and now we have Final Cut Pro, we have Logic Pro, we have all kinds of incredible apps for it, and the Mac is the Mac. And I don't know why people have wanted, for the time that these have existed, to want to merge them together. That's not our desire. It's still a big fat no.
Yeah, I love my iPad. I probably spend at least as much, maybe more time on my iPad doing a whole variety of things than I do on my Mac. I also love my Mac. I do not want them to become the same device. No. I think you've used the phrase in the past, maybe that the Mac is heavy so that iPad can be light, or something like that. And I don't think the Mac is heavy. I think the Mac is awesome. But I think you're right. And I think years ago, a wise man talked about kind of cars and trucks. And I think I was honestly bracing myself for another wave of this, not at this particular forum, but of this sentiment when we were about to release the iPad with an incredible M4 in it, because there's a mindset out there that says, okay, you took this incredible, powerful V8 engine that powers this truck that I use to tow my boat, and you put it in this sports car. Why can't I haul lumber and a boat with this sports car? And it's like, no, this engine is awesome in the truck and it's awesome in the sports car. And when you use your iPad Pro right now, it's the best iPad experience you can ever imagine, and that's worth a lot to a lot of people. I mean, that is a great experience, and we want to keep making iPad the best iPad it can be. We are not trying to create a Windows 8 PC or whatever.
Moving on to macOS Sequoia, I can't, every time I see Sequoia, I cannot help but note that it has all 5 vowels.
Wow.
An achievement.
I think I play too much Wordle. I think it looks like, well, that's cool, but big deal. I think it's like a game changer. I'm really like, it's like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, I think I'm going to use this all the time with the new continuity feature where you can get iPhone mirroring on your Mac.
Yeah.
Is that, it seems like that's harder than it looks. Is it?
Great low latency connectivity and discovery and all that is the magic behind continuity, and is always a challenge to make great. But when it works, it's magic, and that's why continuity is magic. But this is one that many of us, and I certainly have wanted for a long time. I use continuity camera all the time, and then my phone is up here. And I leave it up there sometimes, and then I want to get at it. And now click, boom, I can. You know, it's right there. But there are just so many times when you want to access your phone, it's on the other side of the house or in your bag, and it's great. And we made the trackpad gesture handling just totally smooth, so manipulating the phone is really natural. So I think it's great.
Apple operates worldwide, and the world is very wide. And you guys often say Apple complies with the laws around the world as needed on a per country or whoever the jurisdiction is.
Yep.
The world's gotten wider in the last year.
And flatter.
But with the DMA in the EU now in effect,
Really?
Oh. Best stickers out there.
now we know,
I know.
Now we know where the attendees from Belgium are sitting. Brussels. In general, as Apple has adjusted the rules, the nature, whether they're technical rules or they are policy rules like in the App Store, to adapt to the changing world, to adapt to changing features, in general, you guys seem to make significant efforts to keep the rules the same everywhere as much as you can. For example, when you guys came to an agreement with the Japanese Fair Trade Commission about something with reader apps, okay, and we'll just make this the new rules everywhere. With the DMA compliance, you guys have gone a different way, where, okay, this is what we need to do in the EU. Here is an extensive set of frameworks, technologies, policies. Trust me, I read it all. It is super extensive. But what is your thinking about when to, okay, let's apply these changes everywhere versus, okay, we're going to keep this as the default everywhere, but we'll do that only when needed?
Well, John, this has been, first of all, it's been a massive effort. A massive effort by a lot of people at Apple to work to comply to, as you said, we have to, right? We do business in Europe. We have to comply with the laws there. And as the DMA is written, it's been a heavy lift. And especially to do that while trying to balance, the safety, security, privacy needs of our users, because a lot of these things, as you know, run in opposition to those. So it's been a heavy lift, and it's only been in effect for 3 months, since early March, so it's still early days, but we're working hard to try to do what we have to do there, but it's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't think, especially among the technically savvy among us, many of us in this room have an idea that, we all used Macs since even the pre-internet era. We use them now, and we feel like we know how to keep ourselves safe. We know there is no battle that is more continuously fought and just a pitched battle than the one we have around keeping our devices secure and creating an ecosystem where my mom, my kids, I feel like, go ahead and download whatever you want and enjoy your phone, right? That's not what we say with the Macs, unfortunately, right? That's and that has been such a powerful thing for our users, and such an amazing thing, I think, for the overall community, for developers. The opportunity it creates when everyone feels like, I want to try that. Oh, I'll just download it. It works. When we see something that has the threat of imperiling our users and disrupting the ecosystem that has been so valuable to all of the participants in that ecosystem, we're going to, where we can, protect our customers. And we've done lots of very, very hard things in the EU to minimize the damage. But it is no panacea what's being put on users there. And I think it's underappreciated. And I understand on a technical audience why they might think that. I can tell you, and from the point of view of our security teams and those that work on protecting our users, this is a serious issue, and so we're trying to do the best we can for all the users where we can.
I think it's technically minded.
Thank you.
I think it's technically minded critics who don't see things your way,
Yeah.
who roll their eyes and think it's spin and not true, that you guys hear an overwhelming amount of feedback from users who say, oh, I like my iPhone and iPad the way they are. I've decided I trust Apple, and I like the idea that everything going into my phone comes through the App Store, which is vetted by Apple. And I mean, is that true?
Well, I mean,
there really are people
the feedback to us by real users is just overwhelming in that regard. And look, I think look, it's totally valid. Like, if you want an Android phone, go buy it.
Yeah.
Right? There is choice out there. It's fantastic. There are options. And by the way, in Europe, I mean, more people have Android phones than iPhones. So some people, though, say they like the overall ecosystem that Apple has offered. And our customers there write us extensively, like, don't let them screw this up. And so we don't want to let them screw it up.
There's another big topic I want to talk about, but before we get to it, I think I would be remiss not to mark that this WWDC is the 10-year anniversary of Swift. I guess it's me getting older and the way time compresses, but I still think of Swift as new, but I did the math, and when macOS 10.0 shipped in 2001, do you remember the code name?
For
10.0. Which cat?
oh, Jaguar.
Cheetah.
Cheetah.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good, crack marketing team. You've got a job in division. When macOS 10.0 shipped, Next was only 13 years old. I know Objective-C technically came like 1984 or something like that, but it was sort of known for only 13 years. And here we are 10 years into Swift. How is this going?
I mean, extraordinarily well in many dimensions. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about trying to, and you look, if you can go look around the industry and see different places where companies have tried to create new languages, very, very few of them kind of ultimately go anywhere. And Swift it has been just a runaway success for app development on our platform, right? Just, it's a million app on the App Store. I'm not sure what the number is. It's an extraordinary number of apps that use Swift. There's a whole generation of developers now who've come up programming in it, but also many of us who love and loved Objective-C have learned to love and appreciate all that Swift brings as well. So it's been phenomenally successful. When we introduced the language, though, our ambition, step one, was clearly a great language for app development on our platform, right? That was mission number one. But the ambition for the language was as a general purpose systems programming language. And what's happened semi-quietly while Swift has continued to be successful as an app programming language is Apple's adoption and some others as a systems programming language. I mean, now with embedded Swift, we're running Swift in like the secure enclave processor. We're running Swift on servers. We're running Swift, just all over the yes. all over the system. And these are places that historically our only alternative really was C or C++, really. Many of us grew up programming those languages. They are by design effectively unsecurable, right? I mean, they have many interesting properties, but they're operating at a pretty low level of abstraction and are inherently not very safe. And in the world we live in now, having a programming language be safe, as well as ideally, expressive, incredibly productive, are big virtues. We've done so much work on Swift to make it great for interoperability, not just with Objective-C and C, but now also with C++, that we think there's a new era ahead where the world needs a safe, expressive systems programming language, and we think Swift is it.
Yeah.
The
slide I saw in the State of the Union, I wrote it down. Swift is the best choice to succeed C++. That's the whole slide.
And that is the truth. You look at the alternatives out there, nothing, look, Swift is built by the team that built probably the most popular C++ compiler in use today, in Clang. And Swift is more native to C++ than any of the alternatives out there. Its ability to call and interoperate with C++, because this code base, there are code bases out there that aren't going away overnight. And people are going to continue to write a lot of C and C++, but people are also going to add a lot onto it where using a language that can interoperate seamlessly with it and let you grow a safer and more productive code base and also create other things is a unique Swift power. And I see Swift as having an extraordinary future, of course inside of Apple, but across the industry. And I think that's the next 10 years.
Wow. Obviously, we want to talk about Apple Intelligence, but I feel if we're going to talk about Apple Intelligence, we should have somebody out here who's actually intelligent about it. Ladies and gentlemen, John Giannandrea.
Hey guys. Hello.
All right.
JG. GJ.
What's the deal, Craig?
Craig. Sorry.
Sorry for keeping you waiting. It's your colleague's fault for having so much to talk
It's
about.
having fun listening to you backstage.
Siri. Let me give you a slogan. This time we mean it.
I think when I started working with the Siri team, the first instruction I gave them was failure is not an option. Because a lot of people use Siri a lot of the time. And as it's got better over the years, we see in our data that people just use it more. And the numbers, I'm not going to tell you what the numbers are, but they're huge.
Well, billion and a half requests a day.
Yeah, 1.5 billion voice requests a day. But within that, like the mix is shifting. Because when people use a voice assistant and it works for them, then they use it more. So it's a very shifting target.
I'm going to give you a recent example from a friend of mine. This is obviously using iOS 17. What time zone is Las Vegas in? And the answer was, I tried it and got the same answer. Sorry, I can't help with that, but you can ask me the time in a specific city.
Yes.
If you change that from what time zone is Las Vegas in to what time zone is Las Vegas, then it would.
Right.
It gets it.
So this is the NLP brittleness problem, which is you don't want to have to teach a system all of the ways that human beings might ask for something. So one of the things that we showed at WWDC was an example of you correcting yourself and saying two different things, and the new models figuring out which thing you meant. And so the good news is that the technology of language models is getting dramatically better and is less likely to make these fragile mistakes, because they drive us nuts too.
It's good to hear that.
Yes.
let me clarify something. And I don't think it was unclear in the keynote, but I just think that it's so important that it deserves to be emphasized over and over again. Is everything we've spoken about heretofore is not Apple Intelligence.
Right.
Machine learning in photos, the email categorization, all sorts of stuff that would broadly fall under your domain is not what you're calling Apple Intelligence.
Some of it is powered by Apple Intelligence.
Well, so things like, for instance, the
Smart script.
script, the math, and so forth. We are not; those aren't built on the foundation models on device or in the cloud. And when we're able to bring those to the much broader class of devices, because they don't require some of the power that is foundational to running these foundation models.
Right.
And so the keynote was organized in part both to get that big idea out of Apple Intelligence, but also to make kind of clear for people what's for all the devices and what's for the class of devices that can support Apple Intelligence.
So let's talk about the class of devices that can support Apple Intelligence. The cutoff is for iPhone is very recent. It is the iPhone 15 Pro with the A17 Pro system on a chip, and then any iPad or Mac with an M series chip.
Yeah.
What is that cutoff? Why is that the cutoff?
So these models, when you run them at runtime, is called inference. And the inference of large language models is incredibly computationally expensive. And so it's a combination of bandwidth in the device, it's the size of the A&E, it's the oomph in the device to actually do these models fast enough to be useful. You could, in theory, run these models on a very old device, but it would be so slow it would not be useful.
And so it is not a scheme to sell new iPhones.
No, not at all. Otherwise, we've been smart enough just to do recent iPads and Macs, wouldn't we?
Right.
Yes.
No, but we've had so many. I mean, our first move in any way is to figure out how we can bring features back as far as we can bring them. Yeah. I think you've seen that time and time again with us. What JG says is right here. This is what it takes. This is the hardware, what it takes. I mean, it's a pretty extraordinary thing to run models of this power on an iPhone.
Yeah.
And it turned out it took us building this iPhone.
You guys have mentioned the neural engine, and that the A17 Pro is the first A-series chip with the neural engine. But is RAM a function of that too, or is it really primarily neural engine, or it's really all of it?
Sure, it's many dimensions of the system. Yeah, RAM is one of the pieces of the total.
Yeah, and the A17 Pro is not the first A chip that's got a neural engine, but it's got a much bigger neural engine than the chip that came before.
Right. One thing that it doesn't seem, I don't even know if they're capable of it, but like, I find with dealing with other human beings.
Difficult, right?
Difficult, I do, yeah, obviously. Well, you know how many
unnerving.
Right.
How many colleagues do I have? I got one podcast on the side with one colleague. Let's see if I can keep that going. No, but I find it, or I should say, maddening when I meet somebody who never says, I don't know. I think that the humility of somebody who, hopefully, you know most of the questions I'm talking to you about, but if you don't know, I appreciate just saying, I don't know.
Sure.
Or I'll go find out. Seems like LLMs do not have the I don't know
That is true. They also have the feature that they double down on,
Right.
on what they said. I think we technically call this bullshitting, but so what we have done in the features that we announced is we've been very careful about applying this technology in a very thoughtful way. So we don't have features that will write, a college essay about something about the world, right? We've tried to corral this technology to do what it's really good at doing. So a good example of that would be summarization. That used to be an open research problem in the NLP community, and now it's essentially solved with guardrails and a whole bunch of careful work, but basically you can summarize an email now. And so that's for each of the features that we launched, we've had these internal debates about, is this technology ready for real users to use?
Right, so that you're not going to recommend using glue to stick your cheese on a pizza.
We do not have that feature.
Just to pick an example at random.
To pick a random. How are you thinking, though, about protecting against, let's say, offensive, wrong, or just plain goofy, like using glue on pizza responses?
Yeah, so there's two problems that you have to address with LLMs. One is the hallucination problem you've alluded to, just saying random stuff that's not true. But the other is the research community calls the safety problem, which is saying things which are inappropriate or suggesting things that are bad or illegal, for example. And there we have to tread much more carefully because we think that the user is using our devices for their purposes and their creative reasons. And so we don't want to be the arbiter. We don't want to have a huge block list of words you're not allowed to say or ideas that somehow don't work in the word processor, right? So we have to find that balance point where we're not amplifying inappropriate uses. And we do have a huge number of what we call guardrails and system techniques to make sure that certain topics are off limits. But it's a very fine balance. As we spend a lot of time in a lot of meetings trying to figure out, because this is new for us, this is new for the whole industry, trying to figure out where that balance point should be.
Right, and it seems, you don't really have, like you said, like you're not writing, Apple Intelligence is not generating a first draft of an essay. So you can't get it, you can't give it a prompt. There is no interface to give it a prompt to say, write me a story about shoplifting from my local Apple store. I'm trying to pick something that is funny and wrong, but would be a headache for Jaws. That everybody's getting the new Apple Intelligence to give them instructions on how to steal stuff from the Apple store.
Yeah, an example we use internally and research use all the time is like, tell me how to hotwire a car.
Yeah.
It's a factual question. Most large language models, go try it, will probably refuse to answer that question because they've detected that it's illegal activity and they're not going to help with that.
But so what you could do with Apple Intelligence is you can sit down and write your own story that might be inappropriate or goofy or committing crimes in the story, select it, and then say, make this more serious. But that's your story that you started with. The Apple,
and it could be a fictional story.
Right, it could be fictional, but that's not being generated. You're the person, you're the one who wrote the story. So if now it has more professional sentence structure, that's on you, right? I feel like this is a very interesting balance you guys have.
It is, and I mean, we literally had ethicists involved in our discussions on this. We do have our roots as a personal computing company. I mean, this is a tool for you. So if you were writing a story, or maybe you are writing something about a very harmful phenomena for the purposes of illustrating why it's bad, or to protest against it, or and if you're not careful, a model that you say, well, summarize this for me, or help proofread it for me, make it more professional. A model that says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. This seems to be about harmful topics. Well, now that's not empowering you as the user of the system. We aren't going to introduce the harm. We're not going to amplify the harm. But we do think it's a tool for you. And so that's the line we're carefully trying to draw. We're not,
Yeah, and we published a blog post yesterday which goes into some depth about how we built these models and how they work and so on and so forth, some technical behind the scenes stuff. And in there we actually listed some of our values about how we approach our Apple Intelligence. And one of those is respect the user's agency.
I'm not surprised, and I'm glad to hear it, but with rumors, rumors that you guys were heading towards, Jaws kind of spoiled it with his tweet when he announced.
Absolutely incredible.
Absolutely incredible. It's like, oh, now,
Boy, you
we
saw
know.
right through that one, didn't you? Yes.
But I do, I'll even admit, knowing Apple's sensitivity towards the brand and the brand promise to customers that perhaps Apple would shy away from such things. And I think that's great that you don't want to limit, but you're not going to give them the story, but you'll let them make the story they want to make.
Yeah, it's very early days. This technology is very, very nascent. It's very powerful, super exciting, the experiences we've been able to build this year, but it really is the first of a many, many year journey with this technology.
Image playgrounds, I guess, is the closest, or is the part of it where you're generating the most, right? And there's 3 styles. I think you call them animation, illustration, and sketch. But not among them is photorealistic.
Yes.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
A notable absence. Why?
Well, because you don't want to make it easy to make deepfakes.
Right.
And there's no reason to do that in the first version of the product. And there's lots of other tools that you can go get.
Let's face it, there is an ick factor to it, right? It is, this is kind of gross and uncomfortable and worrisome, really. Right?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. The opportunities for abuse are really high, and we think a lot of this. We're focused on communication that's fun and expressive. We're not trying to create an alternate reality at all. It's very clear when you see our output. No one's going to go like, "Oh my God, JG was on the moon," or whatever, right? It's like
That alligator really on a surfboard?
that alligator on a surfboard. We want to create no confusion on these points.
But like with the new feature in Photos where you can remove unwanted either people or objects in the background, that I'm guessing is generative technology because the fill is not just, a checkerboard, it's actually filling in what it is. So obviously the capability is there in the technology you have, but there you're not generating reality, you're filling in the reality that was there behind the object removed in the photo.
Yeah, it's a super fine line, and how aggressive we would pursue like decluttering a photo was also a point of great debate. We make sure to mark up the metadata of the generated image to indicate that it's been altered in this way, and like you say, we're not. Yeah, it's good too. But yeah, we're not trying to generate photorealistic images of people or places or anything like that. And
or when you point your iPhone at the moon.
For example, or a good example, another random example, yes.
Just off the top of my head. If I could pick one word to summarize the entirety of yesterday's keynote, I would pick this word: trust. And let me give you an example. Hypothetically speaking, let's say there's another company that makes desktop operating systems, and they see AI as the bright future that it really has. That this is, we're on the cusp of it, and maybe they want to power AI PCs, and would introduce a feature that could recall everything that was on your screen every 5 seconds. And then it turns out that the first version they shipped is shipping the database of all of the text that was on your screen all the time in a plain text database on your startup drive. Hypothetically speaking.
I think that's the perfect
Hard to
reaction,
imagine
Greg.
that you think that's good.
But is that frustrating to you that that it sort of plays into the consumer's worst fear about this stuff? New stuff is scary. Fingerprint sensor on my phone. Whoa, 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 Apple's gonna have my fingerprint? That seems scary. Oh no, and they're just on device, and it's not just on the device, but it's in a secure enclave, and we can explain to you how the secure enclave is very clear, and it never goes to the cloud, and if you get another device, you've got to use the fingerprint sensor again, because we never had your fingerprint. Oh, okay. Oh, now you're gonna scan my face. Oh, no, not my face, right? But that's, I'm exaggerating, but I think it's
Not really.
normal.
Not really. That was the reaction.
It's normal that people are like, whoa, and then, okay, let me listen. But like with the Windows recall feature, it literally plays into the worst fears people have. They hear this feature, and then here 10 days later, somebody figures it out, and it's like, it's all in plain text there. Is that frustrating to you as you're building out features that you're trying to build trust in, that overall, outside out?
Are we frustrated by the failings of our competitors? Is that what you're
Heartbreak.
The answer's no.
What he says.
Right before you came out, we were talking about Swift, and to go back to that, a big part of the news didn't really make the keynote because State of the Union is where developer-oriented news goes. That's, I always call it the developer keynote. And Xcode has a tremendous amount of new generative AI features. There's, I think at the first cut is completion, code completion.
Yeah.
And the next one is Swift Assist. Am I getting the name right? Because it's Swift only, right? It's very specific to Swift.
Yeah.
I hear that though, and I think trust, and I think there's two trust factors. The first one is, can the developer trust the code that's being generated? And then the second one is, can the developer trust that their code isn't being misused to train the data for others?
Yeah, both are true, right? I mean, it turns out these large language models are very good at generating code if you ground them in code that's either been run and tested or code that was legitimate code that was being used. And there's a technique for doing this called retrieval augmented generation. And so that second feature is anchored in, ground truth about what is good working code. And yes, certainly we would not use our developers' code to train our models. In fact, we could say something even stronger, which is we don't use any of our users' data to train Apple Foundation models.
So what can you say about the training data that you did use to train the code generation features? Where did it come from, if not from users?
Well, the foundation models themselves are trained on a wide variety of data, some of it public web data and some of it licensed data. And so for the public web data, these large language models learn to generalize by seeing literally, billions and trillions of tokens. When we do that with Applebot, we let publishers opt out of having their website be included in that, but the web is a very big place. And then for the Swift code specifically, I actually don't know the answer to the question.
Oh, look at you like that. He said, I don't know.
Yeah, I like that.
It's not my team's feature, but I do know that it uses RAG, so it's grounded in code that's probably been licensed or otherwise acquired.
Yeah, and then we do a lot of synthetic data generation as well. When it comes to coding data, we can take things like our own documentation, prompt the model. All right, that is someone who works on our documentation. But use it to prompt a model to say what are the kinds of things people would want to do with this API, write a program that does that, and then create a pipeline that verifies that that's working code, corrects it, et cetera. And so through these kinds of advanced pipelines, you can generate more and more great examples, which then in turn become great training data or great prompts at runtime to answer questions. So synthetic data, I think, is going to become more and more of the answer for making these models smarter, especially if you can build a good evaluation feedback loop to establish like this generated output is actually correct.
So a question very specifically for you, Craig, is are the engineers on your teams using these features?
Only in a pilot sense so far, because these things have come together while we've been working on training them and getting them into a great shape. They've only been, we've only achieved the performance and quality level we wanted very recently. And so I can't claim that, you know, this release was X% written by our models, but people who use them love them. I mean, the acceleration, sometimes it's you know, it's kind of a mind reading experience. You know what you want, and you're like, wow, okay, it did it. It gave me exactly what I wanted. So I expect we'll be using them very regularly internally.
Well, they will be. So I don't mean to say present tense in terms of I know that this is new and maybe, you know, very early release developer tools aren't being used for production releases of software, but the plan is that this is not just for others who, oh, okay, you guys want code generation and Xcode. Internally, it will be dog food.
Oh, for sure. There's like a lot of internal demand, a lot of interest in it, and absolutely. Yeah.
And in terms of that fear or just back of your mind suspicion that, oh, I don't want to use AI tools that have a server component with my data because I don't know what happens with it, engineers on your team will be able to use it with Apple Intelligence even when it goes to the private cloud compute, knowing the secrecy that your teams work with even inside Apple.
Yeah, well, and it's I mean, private cloud compute is a topic I'd love to dig into. The predictive code completion feature you talked about, though, one of the great things about it is it's entirely on device.
Right.
So we were able to get which I think is relatively novel. I think a lot of the tools out there that do that now are involving sending your code off to somebody's servers. And not private cloud compute servers for that matter, but this is all running on device. It's incredibly fast, and it has, you know, it's going to work when you're on the plane or offline, and et cetera. So I think that's a fantastic component. But yeah, I mean, a huge part, and I think many of us who've wanted to use models for a lot of times what you want to use them for are things that involve personal or confidential information. You know, if you're going to like revise an email or fix up some code, odds are that's not code you just are attempting to give away, or confidential information that you were intending to leak into someone else's training set. And so for us, a prerequisite to doing personal intelligence that involves data you actually care about is ironclad privacy, and they're yes, and on device, of course, is a fantastic answer where that works, and we've really been pushing the limits of what is possible to do on device, and part of this is specializing these models for certain high-value tasks by building adapters that can achieve really high-level performance, but sometimes hard to beat having tons of compute to throw at the problem in an instance when it comes to these big things. But we don't want that to mean the compromise of giving away your data or losing control of your data in any fashion. And so we absolutely moved mountains across like every component of the stack, from having our hardware team build us custom servers to us building a custom OS and inventing a lot of technology for trusted attestation, and server management, a bunch of code written in Swift to do that, to create, I think for the first time in the industry, an at-scale AI inference platform where the operator of the platform and no one else can have any access to the data that's being used for inference. So now you can use this thing and really feel like, oh, I'm not exposing my data to others. It's existing in that same privacy bubble that has protected my data on my phone, and that's been extended to the cloud. And we think that's an extraordinary engineering achievement, and I think what the future of AI should be.
Was this table stakes for Apple that, okay, some of these tasks are going to require cloud compute?
Today, yeah.
And if they're going to, and we want to have these features, therefore we need to do what Craig just said and build out Apple's own servers, Apple's own everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Private by design.
I have to ask, what is the Apple Silicon in the cloud servers?
Saying?
No, we didn't specify.
Classified?
We didn't specify.
Oh, we didn't specify. That's the same thing.
We choose not to answer, John.
Can you say how many of the servers there are?
A lot.
It's very powerful.
I have to add some value up here, John.
All right, let me ask about this with private cloud compute. A lot of people are very concerned with the rise of AI in general, which until yesterday was almost entirely for large language models and generative in the servers, in the cloud. The environmental impact. Very, very serious concerns. What is the story with Apple's private cloud compute and its environmental impact?
Well, I mean, there are two reasons why we wanted to build private cloud compute out of Apple Silicon. One is the privacy architecture it gives us, building on the secure or enclave, trusted boot, every other thing about the systems. But the other is the incredible energy efficiency of Apple Silicon, which is forged in our history of building mobile silicon. This is not the history of your typical AI inference silicon, right? But it is ours. And so we just get tremendous efficiency out of our private cloud compute. And this is going to allow us to continue to have our data centers be 100% carbon neutral. Which
renewable energy.
Huh?
More than that. It's
more than 100.
No, it's all renewable energy. Right.
It's all renewable.
Yeah. So it's not just carbon neutral. It's entirely 100% renewable energy.
That's right.
Yeah.
So to clarify, this is not with carbon offsets.
No, this is 100% renewable energy. So it's a phenomenal environmental story. Not to mention that a ton of this is running on your device, which is inherently very efficient, right? And not even going to the data centers. But as you know, this has been a big concern for generative AI, is the amount of energy they're using off the grid, and we have an incredible Apple kind of story on that. So,
Is it possible that achieving that took a little extra time?
hence the patience. Yes.
Patience? But I do think that there was, with the rise of AI and a couple years ago, the hot new thing was cryptocurrency. And I don't think people were waiting for Apple to mint its own cryptocurrency. I think most people expected Apple to let that one pass. And I think AI, there is undeniably not just a little there, a lot of there. And I think there was a consensus of, that 2030 whole company is going to be carbon neutral. Mm-hmm. Wow, that goes out the door because now there's this monkey wrench thrown in. But no, this does not disrupt, this doesn't move it back to 2031. It's day one, renewable energy.
Yep.
I think that is
that
fantastic.
goal is very much alive and well. Yep.
Can you speak to me a little bit about this idea of verifiable images on the cloud compute? It's not source code that you're giving to researchers. They're images. But how does getting an image of the OS let them verify the integrity of the OS in a cloud server?
Yeah, a couple things. So our benchmark really is iPhone, right? With your iPhone, we, of course, every time we make a change to the behavior of iPhone, it's because we've shipped a software update with an image of the software, and researchers are able to debug that system and observe its behavior and check its code and so forth. And traditionally in the cloud, that's totally not the case, right? If someone's operating a server, you're sending your request to their server, you have no idea what's running on that server. You have no way to inspect what's on that server. Even if at one moment in time it got audited, you don't know if a minute later it changed its code and a minute later changed it back. I mean, you just can't have any confidence in what's happening there. Very much unlike what's happening on your phone. So we wanted to make sure we could give that same property, and we do this by saying that the whole trusted boot infrastructure that the SEP, the Secure Enclave Processor on the server is measuring, is able to identify exactly the total image of that software. And this OS is also frozen so that no new code can be added, no new code can be generated at runtime. Like the OS literally won't map in any executable code pages that aren't part of the encrypted image. And when you make a request to that server, there's a handshake where the SEP attests and says, this was a trusted boot, and here is the measurements, the signature of this OS that you would be talking to if you were to send me the request, and here are the keys to have that conversation with this thing. Well, separately, your phone is going to look in an attestation log, an append-only log, you brought up crypto, it's that kind of technology, that Apple had to post that these are known posted public images of this, and your phone says, is the image I'm talking to a publicly posted image? If it's not, I will not talk to that device. So even if an attacker were to try to sign an image, put it on that server, and try to intercept a request, your phone would refuse to talk to it. So there you've got these images that we have to publicly post. We are then also equipping researchers with VMs so they can run those images on a Mac and debug and test them and verify our claims as well, which is even a step up from what they're offered for iPhone.
And do the same thing where they can take the image on their local VM that they're testing and check that its signature matches
exactly
the one that you've posted to this write-only chain that they can verify. That you didn't ship, Apple didn't ship the researchers a different image.
Exactly, exactly.
And no one's ever done anything like that.
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
It's not a subtle difference, but a complete inversion difference with Apple Intelligence. And the starting point is that because you're running on the customer's devices, you've got all of this personal context to start with, as opposed to starting with whatever was just typed in a box. How different is that in terms of, are your models along the lines of other models and you just have a different data source, or is it an entirely different approach to creating generative models?
The core models are so-called foundation models. What's new and novel is that they can operate, the ones on device can operate over their semantic understanding of the user's data, right? So we have a semantic index of your messages, things on your, Greg was mentioning earlier about, relationships in your photos and so on and so forth. And so the model can reason over that private data. And what that gives you essentially is a personalized feature that is personal to you and runs on your device. Whereas these other sort of chatbot-like products, they have tremendous world knowledge, right? They've ingested all of Wikipedia or whatever, but they don't know anything about you. And so they're limited to talking in a completely unpersonalized way. And we think that that's just, interesting but less useful than getting things done with your data, like we demonstrated at WWDC.
Right, like typing into a chatbot, when does my mom's flight arrive?
Won't work, right, yeah.
And couldn't.
It'll make something up.
Right, because it's not going to say I don't know. I mean, we can try it right now and it'll.
But I mean, it's even more foundational than that. If you ask a chatbot, what time is it?
Right.
it doesn't know. Right? No concept that there's an API call that you should be making. And
Yeah, and I know, John, you sort of track how different parts of our stack develop over time. And what's interesting about the semantic index is, for many, many years, foundational part, even going back to macOS 10, has been Spotlight and apps, and then with iPhone, apps contributing information into Spotlight so that the user could search them, or so that the app could use powerful search from the system index within the apps. Well, that same interface, the same way that apps are donating that context to Spotlight, that is the source that the semantic index is then able to take that data and index it not just by keyword and so forth, but semantically, and that becomes the source for Apple Intelligence running on device to look things up. So it's not that there's a whole new, there's no new information being exposed to the system. It's the same information that's been exposed to Spotlight all along. And there's no new work for developers. Another good reason for developers, though, to provide information into Spotlight, because now it's making Apple Intelligence even more able to help the user and to direct the user back into doing activities inside that app.
Probably worth saying it's stored securely on your device as well.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the same way the data always has been on your iPhone.
And the difference in context, like I said, it's very useful over here with world knowledge, but entirely different, but in many more practical ways with personal context. But in your career, really, do you find yourself thinking about how humans deal with context naturally? Craig just addressed me as John a minute or two ago. You knew he was talking to me.
Yeah.
Even though you're John. Does your mind, as someone whose career has been like this, do you constantly think about how you knew that was me, John, not you, John?
yeah, I've spent a considerable part of my career working on this problem. So, I mean, the technical answer to this question is that the breakthrough with transformer models and LLMs that has caused all of the excitement of the last few years is around an idea called attention, which is that not all data is equally relevant when you're considering a time sequence of things. So this is why we use examples like, when do I need to leave to go pick mom up at the airport? Because the model really truly has understood the notion that you have to do one thing before the other, and therefore that it needs to find a flight from your mom, so let's go call the semantic index and see where that flight is. It could be in my email, it could be in messages, whatever. But that notion that there is the idea of picking somebody up from the airport is actually really learned by these models. And that has really been the breakthrough for LLMs and why this technology is so important to figure out how to use appropriately.
That brings me to the last topic from the keynote, and that is the partnership with OpenAI and ChatGPT. Here's my question. Everything we have spoken about in this very long interview to date has all been Apple technology.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, 100%.
All of it, and it is a lot, and it is extremely useful, and it is broad. So why partner with OpenAI?
Well, we think there are use cases for these larger world models. They're not the use cases we've been talking about, but we know that people are pretty excited to use these models for all kinds of tasks. And what we think is going to happen over the coming years is there'll be many of these large models that are specialized for very specific things. And some of them will have different business models. Some of them will be free. Some of them you'll have to pay for. But there may be legal models. There may be models that understand healthcare really well. And so we think that baking an entry point into these models into the user interface is kind of sort of necessary. Otherwise, you're forced with bringing up a chatbot and cutting and pasting stuff. And we respect what these models can do enough to say we should make it easy to do. And we should give you a choice, ultimately, of models to use. And so we'll see how users like the integration that we've done, but we think that this technology is not going away anytime soon. And I think of it a bit like the way Safari deals with search engines.
Search engines, sure.
Right? I mean, it just became a thing that you would type into the URL bar your search term, and that's just a good way to do that. Well, similarly, if you actually do want to write an essay about blue whales and you want to use ChatGPT to do it, we want to make it as easy as possible. And we want to make it very super clear to you that you're using ChatGPT, that the thing you're getting back might have hallucinations, and so that's why we've done the integration that way.
Right. All right.
And it's probably worth clarifying. We talk about it sort of built in, the integration built into the system. The integration is turned off by default. So when you first, I mean, I don't know if that's good, but it's a thing that when, if there were ever a time when the system thought that you might want to use ChatGPT, it's going to say, do you want to set this up?
Right.
It's not, there's nothing that's happening automatically or whatever. You have to say, yes, I want to enable this feature. If someone for some reason just never wants it to be suggested to them at all, they also can just say, never ask. I have no interest in this feature.
Right. And so if
this isn't somehow, insidiously integrated and pre-enabled or anything like this. It's just available if someone wants to turn it on.
Right.
Well, and it's free, and it doesn't require subscription, and your IP address is obscured, and your requests are not logged. So there's a lot of really cool things.
There's a lot we did to make sure that if you were going to use it, that it was as good as it could be.
So, who's paying whom?
I pay Craig. Craig pays John. Yeah, sorry. No answer.
Had to ask.
You knew the answer.
Can you tell me, is it a good story? Should I get Eddie up here?
And a bottle of tequila. Yes.
All right, last question. I've seen this floating about on social media, the same sentiment, but something to the effect. But I think it's everywhere because I think it resonates with people. I don't want AI to create songs and write poetry and make paintings so that I can wash my dishes and do my laundry. I want AI to wash my dishes and do my laundry so that I can make music and I can make paintings and I can make art. And I think it speaks to Apple as a tool maker for people who want to do things like that. It dates to the origins of the founding of the company. Do you guys see it that way? That you're making tools for creative people, not tools to replace creative people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
But I do think these tools will amplify people's creativity and capability. I mean, how many people now, let's go technology from the 80s, could pick up a synthesizer and now make music that maybe previously involved an orchestra, but now they're composing something so much bigger because they have a powerful instrument at their disposal. I think these tools are going to enable people a single individual to express their creativity in bigger and bigger ways. And I think that's tremendously empowering. And that's what it's for us.
And that's what computing has always really been for, is to augment human creativity.
Good answer. Let me thank my guests, John Giannandrea, JG, Craig Federighi, Jaws.
Let's go with Jaws.
I would also like to thank everybody here at the theater. I would like to thank my friends at Sandwich who shot the video, Spatial Jen who shot this and hopefully live streamed it. I would like to thank my wife and my son who are here helping backstage, Amy and Jonas. I would like to thank my sponsors, iMazing, Flexibits, Fantastic Cow and Card Hop, and of course Flighty. Thank you to them. And thank you to you for coming. This is great.
And don't forget the helmet. Yes.